Have you ever felt the sting of being taken for granted by someone you gave everything to? Maybe your child, someone you've devoted your life to, has become distant, indifferent, or even cold. The silence, the absence of gratitude, it hurts deeply. But what if this pain isn't the end of the story? What if it's a sign that something within you is calling for transformation? In this video, we explore the profound shift that happens when you stop expecting and start freeing yourself from the weight of unreciprocated love. We'll dive into the wisdom of Carl Jung, who teaches that true emotional maturity comes from setting boundaries and recognizing your worth regardless of external validation. By watching this video until the end, you'll discover how to reclaim your identity, how to offer love without expecting anything in return, and how to create relationships that are based on mutual respect and conscious choice. You'll learn to transform pain into growth, silence, into self-discovery, and the feeling of being ignored into an awakening of your power. This isn't about changing others. It's about reconnecting with who you truly are. Stay with us as we guide you through the journey of emotional freedom and self-respect. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to stay updated on all our latest content. Carl Jung's profound insight into human suffering reminds us that much of our pain arises from projection. We project onto others the things we haven't fully recognized, integrated, or healed within ourselves. This powerful truth hits especially hard for parents. As a parent, you give love, protection, care, and everything you have. You pour your heart and soul into your children, often selflessly and without hesitation. And somewhere deep inside, perhaps without even realizing it, you start to expect something in return. You hope for gratitude, affection, and presence. You yearn for your efforts to be acknowledged, for your child to remember what you've done, to value it, and to reciprocate. But here's where the harsh truth strikes: the human soul doesn't operate on a system of emotional justice. There's no cosmic ledger where every act of love is accounted for with a precise act of gratitude. This reality can be shattering. The frustration, the resentment, it doesn't stem from just disappointment in the other person. It's an injury to your very identity. If I gave everything, why do I receive nothing? This question eats away at your core, leaving you feeling unseen, unappreciated, and frankly lost. The painful truth, painful to admit even to yourself, is that your child may not know how to reciprocate. Or worse perhaps, you placed in them what you needed to find in yourself: the capacity to love, the ability to nurture, to feel fulfilled. Jung beautifully said, "What we do not confront within ourselves, we will meet as fate." That fate might appear as an ungrateful child, a cold void of emotion, or a silence that stretches on for generations. It's heartbreaking to think that the very thing you've devoted your life to, your children, your love, could lead to such isolation and emotional emptiness. And yet, this is the truth we must confront. Many adult children are not ungrateful out of malice. They simply haven't been taught how to love. They received love, yes, but were they ever shown what it means to give? They were protected, cared for. But did they learn the importance of protecting others? They received endless gifts, yet never learned that love requires a reciprocal exchange. Their ingratitude doesn't come from a place of cruelty. Often, it's a reflection of their emotional immaturity, their lack of awareness. A child raised in an environment where care was freely given without a second thought may grow up expecting that care to be a given automatic, as if love is something they're entitled to without realizing the sacrifices it requires. Jung would call this dynamic the shadow, everything excluded from conscious awareness, yet still influencing behavior in ways we often can't see. The child's shadow here is their inability to empathize with the efforts of others, while the parent's shadow is the unspoken expectation disguised as generosity. When we give without boundaries, when we love without teaching emotional balance, we create an imbalance in the relationship, and that imbalance eventually demands a price. It's not because the love was wasted, it's because love given without responsibility or a sense of limits becomes distorted. It becomes a one-sided transaction, a false idea of what love is supposed to be. You might feel like you've given everything, but if your child never learned to give back, that love can fester into something resentful and unfulfilling. Your child's inability to understand gratitude doesn't mean they are inherently bad or selfish. It's simply that they never had to think about it, never had to learn the profound lesson of reciprocation. They grew up in an environment where love was abundant, where it flowed freely without boundaries, and they never questioned it. For Jung, breaking this painful cycle requires consciousness. It requires you to turn inward, not expecting the other person to change, but realizing that the change must start with you. It's that part of you, the part that believed being a parent would guarantee everlasting love and eternal connection. The part of you that built your identity around being the caretaker, the provider, the unshakable presence in their life. And when that role is no longer recognized, when it's taken for granted, when it's no longer valued, something deep within you begins to crumble. You feel as if you've lost yourself, as if the very essence of who you are has been erased. It's a painful reality, but it's the truth that Jung so wisely points us to, and it's only by facing this truth that we can heal and grow. It's not just the relationship that fades away. It's the image you had of yourself, the version of you that was shaped around your role as a parent. You gave so much of yourself, pouring your heart and soul into raising your children, that you lost sight of who you were before all of this. The dreams you once had, the desires you postponed, the boundaries you never set, all of it was swept away in the tide of motherhood or fatherhood. Every part of you that existed before became submerged under the weight of that single identity, being a parent. But herein lies the profound danger of building your entire sense of self around a role, because roles change. One day, your child grows up, distances themselves, or perhaps simply stops responding altogether. And suddenly, the void that is left behind feels unbearable. You're left staring at a space that once felt so full, and you realize that the very essence of who you are has been lost in the process. This isn't just about losing a relationship. This is about losing yourself. Jung describes this as the loss of connection with the self, the deepest, most authentic part of our being. When we define ourselves exclusively by a role, we disconnect from the entirety of who we are. The ego, in its attachment to the role, forgets the wholeness of the individual, and when that role is questioned, when it is no longer needed or recognized, a crisis emerges. You're left not just wondering who your child has become, but who you've become, or perhaps more painfully, who you were all along, but forgot to acknowledge. This is the trap of parental ego. The belief that your worth is contingent on your child's response, that your identity only holds meaning if it is reciprocated, and that your purpose exists only in fulfilling their needs. But this kind of logic is incredibly dangerous. It distorts love into dependency, turns your selfless devotion into a demand for recognition, and leaves you spiraling into despair when that recognition never comes. The absence of reciprocal love becomes an open wound that you cannot heal on your own. But you must remember something so vital to your healing. Your worth did not begin when you became a parent, and it will not end when your children grow up. You were a whole person before you ever became a mother or father. You had your own story, your desires, your fears, your talents, flaws, and light. Parenthood is simply a chapter in your story, but it cannot be your whole identity. You were already complete before you took on this role. What Jung proposes is a process of reintegration, a reclaiming of the self, a rediscovery of what lies within you beyond the title of parent. This doesn't mean abandoning your love for your child or disregarding the sacrifices you've made, but it does mean liberating yourself from the illusion that your worth is tied to them. You don't need their acknowledgement to validate your existence. Your identity is not built on their recognition. The real task then is not to change your child or their behavior, but to rediscover who you are, even if they never see it. This requires immense courage. When you shift your focus from your child being the center of your world to rediscovering the person you were before, you are faced with the deep, often painful truth of what you've neglected, perhaps, for years. But it's in this brave rediscovery that true liberation begins. It's only when you reclaim yourself that you can finally stop feeling like you've lost everything. And in this reclamation, you find not just your old self, but a new, deeper version of who you are meant to be. The parental ego craves applause, a validation that says, "You've done well." It longs for acknowledgement, for a reward that affirms its tireless efforts. But the true self, the deeper part of you, doesn't crave applause. It seeks the truth. The ego desires external validation, but the self desires meaning. When you stop seeking validation from the outside world, you begin to uncover something much more profound: your integrity. You begin to recognize your ability to exist with dignity, even in the face of absence, and to love without losing yourself in the process. You realize that you are worthy of love and care not because someone else says so, but because you are whole in yourself. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. This shift, this deep understanding of your own, is what restores inner peace. It is not about stopping your love for your child. You can love them endlessly, but about stopping the reliance on their approval to feel whole. The identity you lost in the role of mom or dad can be reclaimed. You just have to look inward with the same compassion and understanding that you have always offered to others and find the person who deserves to be recognized by you yourself. Carl Jung beautifully said, "The soul matures in pain." Real transformation doesn't happen without confronting, revisiting, and often dismantling parts of ourselves that we'd rather ignore. Pain is not a sign that everything is ending. It's a signal that something needs to change, and not in the world around you, but deep within you. The pain you feel now doesn't have to be the end of everything. It can be the beginning of a new stage, an awakening to a deeper truth about who you are. A profound call to stop looking outside of yourself for fulfillment when everything you need can only be found within. The coldness you feel from your child, however unjust it may seem, may be revealing a long-ignored truth you need to rediscover yourself. For years, perhaps decades, your life has revolved around your child, your care, your concerns, your small, everyday gestures, all of which were done with love. And now, as they pull away, their silence opens up a question you may have been avoiding, one that was muted by the rhythm of routine. Who am I without this role? This is a hard question, and it may feel painful to face, but it is a necessary one. The distance, the ingratitude, the indifference, all of it can be seen as symptoms of a wound, yes, but also as invitations. Invitations to look deeper within yourself and ask, what do I truly want for myself, aside from being needed by someone else? What dreams did I leave behind, and which ones still live quietly within me? What value do I give myself when no one else is there to recognize it? It's time to look inward to reconnect with the person you were before you took on the role of parent. And remember that you are enough not because of what you do for others, but simply because of who you are. This is the journey back to the self, a journey Carl Jung describes as the path to the deepest center of our psyche, the very core of who we are. The self doesn't rely on external validation. It doesn't seek approval from others. It exists as the essence of internal truth, the very foundation of our being, long before we take on any social role. What keeps many of us from accessing this core of truth is our attachment to identities that no longer serve us: the selfless mother, the ever-present father, the one who always solves everything, the one who's constantly giving. These identities built on external expectations can keep us locked in a place where we forget who we are beneath the labels. But what happens when that role changes? What happens when your child grows up, distances themselves, or simply stops responding? That identity you've so carefully built crumbles, leaving behind an overwhelming void. It's painful, yes, but within that pain lies the chance to fill the void with something new awareness. Jung famously said that suffering, when understood, becomes light. But when we refuse to understand it, it repeats. Unfortunately, this repetition is common. Parents continue to look to their children for what only they can give themselves: attention, care, validation, meaning. Yet no other human being, least of all a child, can carry such a heavy responsibility, especially not one who may still be emotionally immature. True awakening begins when you accept this reality. When you finally understand that you can no longer demand, beg for affection, or try to please endlessly, it's hard to let go of the hope that your child will somehow get it, that they'll realize the extent of your sacrifices and offer the gratitude you've been waiting for. But only when you stop demanding something from them does something truly transformative happen. Not in them, but in you. You begin to realize that your story isn't over. There's still time. There's still a path, and your existence has value even if no one else recognizes it anymore. Of course, this awakening is not without its pain. It's the mourning of an expectation that hasn't been fulfilled. It's the grief of realizing that you've carried a weight that was never yours, to bear the weight of believing your value depended on someone else. But in that mourning, in that letting go, you find liberation. Jung reminds us that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, requires navigating uncomfortable territories. It asks us to reevaluate old beliefs, confront the shadows we've avoided, and most of all, let go of what no longer serves us. Perhaps it's time to abandon the hope that your child will one day return repentant and grateful. Maybe it's time to let go of the hope that they will one day recognize everything you've done for them, not in resignation, but in freedom. Because when you stop waiting for someone else to fulfill your need for validation, you begin to see. When you stop explaining yourself to others, you begin to truly listen to yourself. And when you release the need to be seen, you will finally see yourself. That's true awakening. It's a radical shift. It's not about depending on others anymore, not about looking back at the past. It's about having the courage to look at yourself, to accept everything you've lived through, and to take that first brave step forward for you. Pain brought you here, yes, but it is awareness that will move you forward. And once you awaken, once you reclaim your true self, you will never be the same. You will feel whole again. Carl Jung once wrote, "You cannot awaken consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid confronting their soul." This quote resonates deeply with the reality of many parents. For parents, confronting their soul means facing the painful truth that their bond with their child has changed, that the love they once shared no longer guarantees eternal reciprocity, and that their child's current behavior demands a response that many parents try to avoid. But it is precisely this silence, this avoidance of confronting the truth, that destroys the relationship. Respect is not born from the absence of conflict. It is born from clarity and understanding. True respect arises when love refuses to become servitude, when care is not confused with subservience, and when affection remains strong but is held within the boundaries that protect the dignity of the one who loves. Saying no is not an act of rejection. It is a statement of existence, of asserting that you matter too. I don't accept being treated with contempt. My life has value. I'm not here to be ignored. These are not confrontational statements. They are affirmations of your worth and identity. Jung teaches us that the process of individuation, of becoming who we truly are, necessarily involves setting clear boundaries between the self and the other. For parents, this means reclaiming the psychic separation from the child, a separation often lost over years of sacrifice and emotional fusion. For so long, you were available, always available. You may have helped even when you couldn't. You may have said yes to avoid conflict. You may have stayed quiet, afraid of being perceived as ungrateful, cold, or distant. But unknowingly, these actions taught your child that your love was so unconditional that it permitted them to treat you with disrespect. And over time, that disrespect erodes the very foundation of the relationship. True love, however, doesn't exclude boundaries. On the contrary, love grows stronger when boundaries are in place, allowing everyone involved to be whole. The absence of boundaries breeds confusion, resentment, and eventually contempt. When you set boundaries, you are saying, I care about you, but I also care about myself. I'm here, but not at the cost of my worth. You may love me, but I'm not going to disconnect myself anymore. These small but powerful gestures do not just restructure the relationship, they redefine it. They make it clear that love must be mutual, respectful, conscious, and above all, adult. Many parents fear that setting boundaries will break the bond with their child. But what truly breaks that bond is constant permissiveness, repeated disrespect, the absence of your voice, and the accumulation of small wounds that gradually form invisible walls between two people who were once deeply connected. Jung would say that the path to transformation involves a courageous act, looking within yourself and acknowledging that your dignity can no longer depend on someone else. When you begin to act according to this principle, you start repositioning yourself, not only in the world, but also within your family dynamics. Setting boundaries is not an act of harshness. It's an act of self-love. It's a significant psychic milestone that reorganizes the role you play in others' lives, and more importantly, in your own. This isn't about imposing fear or control. It's about inspiring respect. And respect is not something you ask for. It's something you build. A firm presence, when established with clarity and love, says, I'm here, but not under any condition. I can help, but I won't allow you to devalue me anymore. I am your parent, but I am also a person. This repositioning will change the dynamic of the relationship. It may feel strange to the child at first, and they may resist, but over time, they will come to understand that love, when it is held within healthy boundaries, is the only love that can last without destroying the self-esteem of the one who loves. And that ultimately is the love that builds real connection, one rooted in mutual respect and understanding. This is the rebuilding of respect, a profound process of inner strengthening, a reconnection with your voice, and above all, a reaffirmation of your inherent worth. It's an act of emotional maturity that doesn't try to force growth in others, but invites them to grow by simply being your authentic self. When you respect yourself, you teach others without saying a single word that you deserve to be respected too. It's a quiet but powerful message. I know my worth, and I won't allow anyone to devalue it. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons helpful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. There's a profound and often painful difference between love that is freely given just as a spontaneous expression and love that is used as an instrument of control. When we love with the expectation of receiving something in return, a gesture, a word, a look, we are unknowingly signing an invisible contract. It's a silent agreement that demands something back. But as Jung so wisely taught, this kind of love is not authentic. It's laced with projections, unresolved desires, and above all, emotional dependency. It's the kind of love that expects the other to fill a void, and when that void isn't filled, we feel betrayed, unseen, and unloved. Carl Jung believed that psychological maturation involves letting go of the inner ties that bind us to others. This includes letting go of the expectation that we will always be recognized, valued, or loved in the way we wish. Loving without expecting anything in return is one of the highest forms of emotional awareness, and one that requires courage. You've given everything, your love, your care, your protection, your education. You've been there when no one else was. And even if your efforts are not recognized today, that doesn't change the truth of what you've done. What was offered from a place of sincerity remains. The value of your gift cannot be erased, not because someone else chooses to ignore it, but because it came from an authentic place within you. But the pain arises when we expect something in return, when we hope for a sign of appreciation, a simple acknowledgement, or a moment of recognition. And when silence follows, it becomes an open wound, a wound that aches with the longing for validation. It is in this moment, when silence turns into frustration, that the need for liberation arises. Liberation from expectation, not from love itself. The truth is, liberation begins when you realize that your inner peace cannot depend on someone else's behavior. Your happiness is not in the hands of your child, your grandchild, or anyone else. It lies in how you choose to relate to your existence, to your soul. It's a deep understanding that you are enough, that your value is not tied to what others give you, but to the way you honor your spirit. Jung teaches us that the integration of the self, the journey toward becoming whole, requires emotional autonomy. This doesn't mean cutting ties with others, but recognizing the boundaries of what they can offer. Your child cannot always give you what you need. They may not even fully understand the depth of what you've done for them, and that's okay. This is no longer your responsibility. It's theirs to learn in their own time. When you stop expecting something incredibly powerful happens, you free yourself You stop measuring your worth by what you get in return. You stop living in the suffocating tension of frustration, always waiting for the next acknowledgement. You stop conditioning your self-worth on the reactions of others. Slowly and with deep self-compassion, you start to realize that what you've been seeking from others, the recognition, the love, the care you must and can cultivate within yourself. This is not selfishness, it's maturity. It's the most profound kind of self-love, the kind that doesn't need anyone else to confirm it, because you already know it's true. It marks the beginning of a new way of living a life no longer shackled by expectations, but instead guided by a conscious choice to offer what you have to give without losing yourself in the process. This shift in perspective is liberating. The pain of ingratitude, which once felt like an insurmountable weight, transforms into a lesson. You come to understand that you did everything you could with the resources you had, and you gave your best not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. And that truth, that meaning, no longer requires external validation. By releasing yourself from the grip of expectations, you also free the other person from the unspoken obligation to reciprocate. It's a paradox, but it's in this moment of freedom that relationships often begin to change beautifully and unexpectedly. When there are no demands, there's room for spontaneity, for genuine connection. Your child perhaps may start to see you with fresh eyes, not because they are forced to, but because they now feel free to return. Yet, even if this return does not come, you remain at peace. You've realized an essential truth. Your worth is not dependent on others' gratitude or recognition. It lies in the depth with which you live your own life, in the love you give freely, without hidden strings, without unspoken clauses attached. You found a rare and precious form of freedom, the kind that can only come from offering love as a gift, not as a transaction. This love is not about ownership or control. It respects, welcomes, and understands, including their boundaries of others. It's wisdom, the wisdom of knowing that you don't have to be everything for someone else to be complete. Jung called this process a return to the center, the point where you stop revolving around others' absences and start to orbit around your awareness, your truth. You don't have to stop loving. You love more deeply than ever. But you stop depending on external love to complete you. True love, as Jung would say, is a light that shines even when no one points it out. And when that light comes from within, it doesn't just illuminate you, but it lights up everything around you. Your child may not appreciate it, your daughter may not understand it, but none of that changes who you are. You don't love to be recognized. Loving is part of your very nature. And in that, and only in that, you find your peace. You are not just a parent, not just a mother or father. Behind that role, you are a person. A whole person with desires, memories, and dreams that existed long before anyone called you mom or dad. And reclaiming that truth, reclaiming yourself, is the truest form of love you can offer to yourself and the world. As we wrap up today's journey, I want to ask you, what have you learned so far? What is one powerful takeaway from this video that resonates with you? And how will you bring it into your own life? I encourage you to take a moment and reflect on how these insights can help you grow, heal, and live with more peace and authenticity. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Please leave a comment below and share one thing you've learned and will now practice in your daily life. Your insights could be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support means so much to us, and it helps bring more content like this to those who need it most. Thank you for being here with us, and I look forward to hearing from you in the comments.